I know, I couldn't believe it either.
Yeah, he's right here. Sunday works, I'll call you back later with the details.
Pick up a telephone in an American home in 1973, and the first surprise is not the rotary dial. It is that the family often did not truly own the telephone at all. In many parts of the country, the bell system supplied the instrument, maintained the line, and sent a repairman when the set stopped working. The phone stayed in one place, usually on a hallway table or mounted to a kitchen wall, with a cord long enough to stretch toward a doorway, but not long enough to create privacy. A call was an event. You stood beside the phone, listened for the dial tone, and turned the wheel one number at a time. Long-distance calls were watched because they cost real money. Children learned not only a phone number, but when it was acceptable to use it. Today, a phone belongs to one person and travels everywhere. The rotary telephone did much less, but it gave one shared object a clear place and purpose inside the home. That expectation of long service continued in the kitchen. In many American kitchens in 1973, a white CorningWare dish with a blue cornflower sat close enough to the stove to be used without ceremony. It could hold a casserole, leftovers, or a holiday side dish, then move from cold storage to the oven and finally to the table. Its value was not decoration. It reduced the number of dishes a family needed and survived years of ordinary use. Scratches, faded marks, and a stained handle did not make it disposable. They proved that it had worked. Many pieces were handed down because the material remained useful long after the pattern looked old-fashioned. Modern cookware offers more colors, lighter forms, and specialized coatings, but it is often treated as replaceable. CorningWare belonged to a different household logic. Buy one dependable object, learn its limits, and keep using it until it becomes part of the family's visual memory. Beside that casserole dish, many homes kept Revere ware pots with bright stainless steel sides and copper-colored bottoms. The design was simple enough to understand at a glance. The metal body was easy to scrub, the bottom spread heat more evenly than thin steel alone, and a loose handle could often be tightened instead of becoming a reason to throw the pot away. These pans were not luxury objects. They were everyday tools used for oatmeal, soup, boiled potatoes, and weeknight sauces. Their weight and balance became familiar to the person who cooked most often. The copper needed cleaning if a family wanted it to shine, and the handles could grow hot or brittle with age, so the old cookware was not perfect. What made it memorable was continuity. The same saucepan could appear at breakfast, during an illness, and at a family gathering years later. It stayed because it still performed the job it had been bought to do. The same logic of maintenance extended beyond the kitchen and into the garage. A Craftsman socket set in a red metal box represented more than a row of tools. It represented confidence that a household could fix part of its own world. A father, neighbor, or older child might use it to tighten a bicycle, repair a mower, replace a car part, or study a loose table. Sears built the brand around a famously generous replacement promise, so the tool felt supported long after the sale. That encouraged people to use it hard rather than protect it like a collectible. The value was in the work completed, not in the shine of the wrench. Old Craftsman tools were also easy to understand. A ratchet clicked, a socket fit, and a worn part could often be identified by sight. Modern tools may be lighter and more specialized, but many are purchased for one project and forgotten. The old set stayed in the garage because every new problem seemed to offer another reason to open the same box. Inside the house, another machine marked the beginning of the day. The electric coffee percolator turned breakfast into a visible mechanical process. Water heated in the bottom, traveled upward through a narrow tube, and fell over a basket of ground coffee. Through the glass knob on the lid, the liquid darkened one pulse at a time. The sound began slowly, then settled into a regular bubbling rhythm that could be heard from another room. It told the household that morning had started. Percolators were easy to understand because every part had an obvious purpose. The basket lifted out, the tube could be rinsed, and the pot could remain on the table after brewing. The method had weaknesses. Coffee could become bitter if it cooked too long, and the metal pot demanded cleaning. Still, the machine created a shared ritual rather than an individual serving. One pot waited for the family, and its smell spread through the kitchen before anyone poured the first cup. By evening, a different appliance used time in the opposite way. The rival Crock-Pot arrived at exactly the moment many families needed time more than another recipe. Ingredients could be loaded before work or school, cooked slowly through the day, and served when everyone returned home. The appliance did not remove labor. It moved the labor to a quieter part of the morning. A roast, beans, stew, or soup could begin before the rush and finish without someone standing beside the stove. That changed the emotional atmosphere of the evening. Opening the front door to the smell of dinner meant one major decision had already been made. Early slow cookers were basic, often with only a low and high setting, and they could produce meals that were soft, heavy, or overcooked. Their importance came from reliability rather than precision. The Crock-Pot became memorable because it solved a scheduling problem in a way the whole family could smell before anyone saw the meal. Other countertop machines promised smaller savings, one repeated motion at a time. The electric can opener solved a tiny task with surprising authority. It stood upright on the counter, held the can against a cutting wheel, and used a small motor to remove the lid while a magnet kept the metal from falling into the food. The machine saved only a few seconds, but those seconds mattered to someone opening several cans for soup, beans, or a casserole. It was especially helpful for weak or arthritic hands. Its permanent place on the counter reflected the confidence of the period. If a motion was repeated often enough, a motor could be assigned to it. Its removable cutting area could be wiped clean, but owners still had to notice food trapped near the blade. The device also had clear limits. It took up space and sometimes struggled with bent rims. A manual opener was cheaper and easier to store. Yet the electric version made the kitchen feel modern because it transformed an ordinary hand movement into a small automated performance. The next kitchen system sold more than convenience. It sold order through a neighborhood gathering. Tupperware was sold as food storage, but its real power came from the demonstration. At a neighborhood party, a dealer pressed the flexible lid, released the trapped air, and showed that the container could be turned or shaken without leaking. That small performance made an invisible promise feel real. Leftovers would last longer, flour would stay dry, and a crowded cabinet could become more orderly. The party also created a business network for women who might have had limited access to conventional employment. Friends gathered, watched, ordered, and sometimes became sellers themselves. The system mixed community with commerce, which could feel supportive or uncomfortable depending on the room. The containers lasted long enough to gain family identities. The large bowl for potato salad, the small one for lunch, the stained one nobody threw away. Tupperware remained because its usefulness was repeated every time the lid sealed with the same familiar resistance. Across the room, another cabinet was beginning to dominate family attention. The console television was not merely placed in the living room, it reorganized the room around itself. The screen sat inside a wooden cabinet designed to resemble furniture, sometimes with doors that closed when the set was off. Channels were changed by hand, reception depended on an antenna, and a weak picture could send someone across the room to adjust a knob or move the aerial. When the set failed, a technician might open the back and replace a tube rather than discard the entire cabinet. Television created shared national moments because a family often watched one screen at the same time. It also narrowed choices and gave broadcasters enormous control over the evening. Modern displays are sharper, lighter, and almost limitless in content. The console set offered far less, but it made viewing a collective household event. Its legacy is not the picture quality. It is the way chairs, meals, and conversations slowly turned toward the same glowing box. While television made moments shared, the next device made one moment physical before it ended. A Polaroid land camera changed when a photograph became part of the event. With ordinary film, the birthday or barbecue ended long before the pictures returned from processing. A Polaroid produced a white-bordered print while the people in it were still standing nearby. The camera clicked, the photograph emerged, and everyone waited for the image to appear. That waiting was social. Children leaned closer, adults warned them not to touch, and the picture passed from hand to hand as soon as the faces became visible. Instant film was expensive, so each exposure mattered. A blurred face or closed eye could not be deleted and repeated without cost. The result was often imperfect, but it became a physical object immediately. Dates, names, and jokes were written on the border. Digital photography is faster and cheaper, yet it rarely creates the same small ceremony around a single picture arriving in real time. Once the picture was passed around, another cabinet often supplied the room's soundtrack. The console stereo made music part of the furniture. A long wooden cabinet might contain a radio, a turntable, speakers, and an automatic record changer hidden beneath a hinged lid. Several records could be stacked on a spindle, allowing one album side to drop after another while the family talked, cleaned, or entertained guests. The sound filled a room because the machine belonged to the room. It was not carried in a pocket or isolated through headphones. The cabinet demanded floor space, and the record changer could scratch or drop records less gently than a careful listener would prefer. Still, the system encouraged shared listening. Someone selected the music, lifted the lid, and changed the atmosphere for everyone nearby. Modern speakers are smaller and more accurate, and streaming offers almost unlimited choice. The old console offered less music, but each choice became a visible household action. The quiet music could be interrupted by the loudest small appliance in the kitchen. The Osterizer blender announced its work with a sound no one could ignore. A heavy glass jar locked onto a metal base, the switch clicked, and the motor rose into a hard mechanical whine. Ice struck the blades, milk thickened, and cabinet doors sometimes seemed to vibrate with the machine. It made milkshakes, sauces, crushed ice, and party drinks with only a few controls. The parts were easy to identify: jar, blade, gasket, base, and switch. The blade assembly could be unscrewed, washed, and fitted with a new rubber seal when the old one began to leak. The glass jar was durable but heavy, and the motor could overheat if pushed too long. Modern blenders are more powerful and safer, yet many feel sealed against the owner. The Osterizer remained memorable because its operation was physical, visible, and loud enough to become part of the household soundscape. Not every familiar household sound belonged to leisure. The steam iron and folding metal ironing board reveal the labor hidden behind a neat home. Shirts, school clothes, table linens, and dresses had to be sorted by fabric and pressed in the right order. Collars came before shoulders, cuffs before sleeves, and a careless pause could leave a shine or scorch mark. The board opened with a metallic clatter and often stayed up longer than anyone intended. This routine required skill, but it also consumed hours, usually from the person already carrying most domestic work. That is why nostalgia needs honesty. The iron could be sturdy, reparable, and familiar, while the expectations surrounding it remained exhausting. Wrinkle-resistant fabrics, dryers, and more casual clothing reduced the need for constant pressing. Something durable disappeared from daily life, but part of the labor disappeared with it. The object is worth remembering without pretending the routine was effortless. The next Saturday machine moved from clothing to floors. A Hoover upright or Electrolux canister vacuum could define the sound of Saturday morning. The cord stretched across the floor, the motor started with a low surge, and the rotating brush changed pitch when it met the carpet. These machines were often heavy because they used metal housings and substantial motors. They were also built around parts a repair shop could reach: belts, bags, brushes, hoses, switches, and bearings. A worn component did not always end the life of the vacuum. Someone could carry the machine to a local shop and bring the same one home again. Cleaning remained repetitive, and dragging a canister around furniture was never graceful. Modern vacuums are lighter, quieter, and sometimes automatic. The older machine mattered because it stayed in service long enough to become linked with a weekly household rhythm. Its noise meant the weekend had begun, whether the children were ready or not. After the cleaning ended, the evening often moved toward the television. Folding television dinner trays allowed the evening meal to leave the dining table and enter the living room. The tray opened on thin metal legs and held a plate, glass, and fork close to the sofa. Some had floral patterns or simple geometric designs, and a matching set could be stored in a narrow rack when not in use. The idea suited a household increasingly organized around television schedules. A family could eat while watching the news, a comedy, or a special broadcast without balancing plates on their knees. The convenience was real, especially after a long workday. It also changed the social shape of dinner. Faces turned toward the screen, conversation paused during important scenes, and the table lost part of its authority. The trays were not major inventions, but they show how a small object can redirect a daily ritual. Furniture followed attention, and attention was moving toward television. Some of the objects around that screen had been acquired through a slower ritual than shopping alone. S and H green stamps turned routine shopping into a slow household project. A grocery store or gas station handed out stamps according to the amount spent. At home, the small paper squares were licked or dampened with a sponge and pressed into booklets. One book became several, and several books became a plan. Families studied redemption catalogs and chose cookware, lamps, luggage, toys, or appliances that might otherwise remain outside the budget. The reward was never truly free, because the program was part of the price and marketing system, but it felt earned through patience. Children could help fill pages, and adults could watch progress gather in a kitchen drawer. Discount retailers and changing shopping habits eventually weakened the model. What disappeared was not only a loyalty program. It was a form of delayed gratification in which an ordinary household object arrived after months of shared attention. These objects were not always better. Many were heavy or inefficient. They lasted because repair shops, guarantees, and routines supported them. Which of these 16 things stayed in your family longest, and whose hands do you remember using it? Subscribe for more stories about ordinary American life.